And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another off-season supporter series. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have to get ourselves to March when the footy returns. So this year, I thought, let's have a chat with some American and international fans to kind of find out how people who were never born in Australia fell in love with the great game that is footy and the club that they are. And joining me today from Cincinnati, somebody I've had on the podcast before, and one of the few people I know that is a huge fan of this particular club. I had to get him on, Mr. Kyle Davis. Kyle, great to see you again, sir.
It's great to see you as well.
It is awesome to have you on. Before we hop into the podcast on the footy part, if you could, just a little bit about yourself outside of the game of football.
Yeah, absolutely. So, 24 years old, born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. Currently an MBA student at UC. Um, do a little bit of movie acting on the outside. It's always confused my teammates because they're like, "Wait, you do movie acting?" I'm like, yeah, I do. And then they look at my IMDb and they're like, "What? But you don't seem like the type." I'm like, "Well, I don't live in LA, but yeah." Um, and yeah, that's kind of the gist.
And he's also a player for the University of Cincinnati footy team, one of the first ever college teams to come together. Awesome accomplishment on that. So I got to ask, sir, everybody, especially in international and US fans, have a funny story. So I got to ask, what is your finding footy story?
So, when I first learned about what the AFL was like 9, 10 years old. I used to go up to my father and I'd just be like, he'd be sitting there at his computer and then they'd be like, I'd come up and I'd be like, so tell me another sports league that exists in the world. And he'd tell me, I don't know, one year, I forget exactly what it was so long ago, but one time he said AFL, Australian Rules Football. I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, I don't know, but I saw a thing on the internet for it once. I'm like, oh, interesting. So I kind of knew about it loosely, didn't really know the rules or anything. And then in 2020, when all the other sports leagues shut down, AFL was the first to resume, I believe in June, which obviously Australia has it going for them in that regard because it's not as hard to lock down a country that's completely surrounded by water on all sides as a giant island. So Australia was able to do that. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to look into the sport. Let's see what this is, how it works. Watched some YouTube videos, watched a few games, and just kind of became hooked.
Nothing wrong with that. Everybody to each their own, a different way. Sometimes it's ESPN, sometimes it's YouTube, sometimes it's purely the fact that they got the chance to play it. So it's always a fun thing to find out. So as we kind of mentioned, you're a player for UC Cincinnati. So I'm going to change this question for the normal. What's your favorite part about the sport of footy?
Favorite thing about the sport of footy, probably one, how unique it is. I mean, other than Gaelic football a little bit, there's really nothing that compares to it,
Mhm.
which is funny because the first thing everyone does when you say Australian rules football is they want to compare it to something. They go,
Rugby.
oh, like
Rugby's the
I
first one for me.
rugby's the first one exactly. We were watching the AFL finals this past September. It was like 12:30 a.m. This one of the only bars that was like open till like 2 a.m., which is why we picked it so we could watch the first half. And there was like a wedding going on, like the after party,
Mhm.
and all these people are looking around, seeing this game on, completely confused. And I think the groom came up to us and started talking about rugby. And I'm like, yeah, great, awesome, man. That's not rugby though. And he goes, huh? He looks over and goes, well, what the hell is that? We explained it and all that. And then there was another guy, bigger, buffer guy behind us, who was, drinking a beer, and he just starts watching it with us and goes, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely." So definitely its uniqueness, and I think the other thing I really like about the game is how inexpensive and easy the barrier to entry is.
Mhm.
So I played hockey for 12 years, right? I was a goalie. Equipment costs are outrageous, ice time's
Mhm.
outrageous. And you gotta learn how to skate, right? So you say, "Oh, I want to play hockey." It's like, great. Do you know how to skate?
Mhm.
Like lacrosse, it's smaller barrier to entry, but like, here's a ball, here's a stick. The ball goes in the stick. If you can't catch that ball and that stick, you ain't playing the game with us. But with Australian rules football, it's completely different. You got ball, you got cleats. Hey, you know how to punch a ball, you know how to kick a ball, you know how to run with the ball, and the ball touches down, you can play. So
Hmm.
it really it's so easy to recruit players because one, the game, I've always said the game sells itself,
Hmm.
and the game is so easy for beginners to pick up and actually be able to play the game on day one. So
Hmm.
I'd say those are my favorite things.
Yeah, sometimes teaching the skills are a little bit fun, but it's like it's easy for somebody to run and catch the ball, so it's kind of easy to get them started into it. Getting the
Mhm.
finer details of the skills, I completely agree with you. Like it really does sell itself because a lot of Americans that I show the game to, they're like, this is really cool. Like they're fascinated by it. So it is something, it will sell itself if you can put it to them correctly. And as I kind of lead it in previously, and I was lost track of my order on this, the actual question that I wanted that previously is because you play, I gotta ask, what's your favorite sport? What's your favorite part about playing the sport of footy?
Hmm. You know, I've always kind of played forward, limits how much I have to tackle others or I'm getting tackled. And it's not that I'm like scared of getting tackled. It's just health wise, I
Hmm.
already have a really
I
bad neck.
understand.
So it's nice because I can just be in the forward pocket. If the ball comes to me, I'm
Mhm.
kicking goals. I can body people a little, but I typically I don't have to hold on to the ball and get slammed by three different people. I get the ball, I kick at the goal. If they knock, push a little bit, that's fine. If they bring me down, it is what it is. But it
Mhm.
just I only get tackled maybe once every few games because of it. And I just like scoring goals. It's a lot of fun. So it's the opposite of playing goalie, which is what I played in ice hockey for
Mhm.
12 years. So
Yeah, it's addicting. I was one of those when I played. I was a full forward. More is because it was one of the few places that the few skills that I did have. I was actually pretty good at kicking the ball straight. So always beneficial for a full forward. We can kick it straight. So we already kind of discussed. You got into the AFL when you were a little bit younger, a little bit like me myself. I caught it when I was a little bit younger through my father. So we'll jump to the next one because anybody watching the YouTube video knows who this is, and I kind of insinuated a little bit earlier in the show, but who is your club in the AFL and why?
well, as you can see from my hat, at times I feel like I hate myself. So the Gold Coast Suns. Uh, I guess you could say Fremantle's now my second team because I'm now the president of the Cincinnati Dockers. So I feel like I'm kind of obligated to have them as my second team. But yeah, Gold Coast is my first and probably will always be my team.
Well,
Um, so you make bad. They always say when you grow up, bad decisions can follow you for the rest of your life. Well, here we go.
I will tell you this though. I respect the hell out of you for picking the Gold Coast. No, I seriously do.
Mhm.
Because it is not easy to pick an expansion club. It is definitely not easy to pick an expansion club that has literally been crapped on its entire existence. But
Yeah.
honestly, looking at it, I think the building blocks are there. They have done a lot of good things. I think the road is looking much, much better. So again, I will say this. I respect you guys and I respect fans of GWS. And I know Sydney, everybody knows I'm a Swans fan, GWS. Don't you guys? I respect the hell out of GWS Giants fans because it's not easy, because it is not easy to grab onto a new expansion club and still stay a great fan. So I do respect the heck out of you for being a Gold Coast fan. So I gotta ask, sir, what was the first Suns thing that you ever purchased or bought or purchased or were given?
Yeah, I purchased it. You go to Goodwill's and Plato's Closet in Cincinnati, you're not going to find Gold Coast Sun stuff. So, and
It'd be
and no
funny
no
if
one's gonna
it'd be awesome if you did.
no. And you ask someone, hey, can you buy me a Gold Coast Suns hat? They write the letter for the suicide hotline and hand it to you. So you're not gonna. They're gonna say, do you need help? Do you need to talk to someone? But um, yeah, it was a baseball cap. It was kind of like this, but it was all red. And the wasn't black bill. I think that was the first thing. Yeah, and since then I've gotten a bunch of other stuff. I mean, yeah,
That's
you know.
fantastic. It just I want to do a little question out of nowhere only because this is one of the few teams. There's a couple of teams this year that have new logos. So I gotta ask, sir, your thoughts on the new logo of the Gold Coast Suns?
No. Um. So
Love the
I
honesty.
can,
Love the honesty.
yeah, I can go into detail with it. So, one of the biggest things is right. And I'm not saying a logo is super, super important, but I
Hmm.
think it does show the general trajectory of your club. But case in point, Denver Nuggets. They had a horrible logo for a while, then they got a great logo. And it went with getting better players, and now they're a superpower in the league. So I'm not saying branding is everything, but there is something to the professionalism of your club. Regarding the logo itself, I have a few major criticisms. The first one is it's very empty. It's a very simplistic logo. I give them this. It has a lot with a little. There's a lot going on there. You just got the S, but you also have it as a sun. You got that's like kind of in the empty space. The bottom half of the S has those lines in it that kind of mimic the waves. And the shape of it is in the shape of an Australian rules, football. Uh, there's a few things that I think would have made it a lot better. First one is I feel like it needed to be in some sort of shield design. I
Hmm.
feel like that would have really helped, or some sort of perimeter, kind of like what St. Kilda has with like kind of that general badge. I'm not saying that that's the whole solution. I'm not even a big fan of St. Kilda, but I think having that sort of shield design would have helped. I also feel like they're doing this like red on red background. That's like it just it's like first rule graphic design. You have to have the colors be different for it to pop. So I'd say regarding that, I would like for them to have changed the logo from red to yellow with a red border around. And I feel like it would pop a lot more, especially on their home reds, because it just blurs together way too much there. And I think the third thing is I'll pull up the logo here. But when I looked at it, the first thing that came to my mind was the ball is in the shape of an S, right? It makes an S. I feel like the gap on both sides of that S should be increased, whether it's like a little bit more or even twice as much. Because as much as I can see the S, it's very hard to tell. And I think
Hmm.
if you just expanded that dead space, the S would look way more noticeable. It wouldn't really take away from understanding it's a football, but I think it just wouldn't be as confusing on the eyes because you see it from a distance and you don't even really see the S. So yeah, I know I'm fairly passionate about this. It's not a big deal, but at the same time, you want your rebrand to make your club be viewed to others as, hey, we're taking a step forward. And
Hmm.
instead, this rebrand makes it look like we're going sideways or even backwards. So it just is a failed rebrand. I don't know many people that say they love it.
Yeah, it's very interesting when the logo changes because sometimes it divides people, but the majority that I've seen are a lot with you. It's like I understand the simplicity, but I don't know if they really thought that one fully through. So 100% with you. So I hate to go from negative, but let's reel it back in just the tiny bit and go to this is that I tell a lot of people that fandom comes in many different sizes. It's just like people. So I always ask this when it comes to it. Everybody fans differently. I mean, most people that are online know me that I get up at 2 a.m. to watch every single Swans game on time. I think I've only missed one game live in like 5 years. So I ask this of you, sir. Describe to me your fandom of the Gold Coast Suns. What is your typical what is your part? What is your fandom of the Gold Coast Suns?
Question. Anytime they get a game at like 11 p.m., I'm definitely going to tune into that. Even like 1 or 2 a.m., I'll typically be able to catch the first half, maybe the whole game if I'm up late. Any sort of those like 4 a.m., 4:15, even 5 a.m. Typically, I'm just going to go to bed and watch it the next day. Um, Also, there are a few games that like if in the first quarter it starts to be a blue. What was I saying? Usually, if the game's I'll often, kind of just watch them the next day. And then if games get out of control after the first quarter, usually if the Suns are doing it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll keep watching this. Yeah, yeah, it's nice for us to beat up on North Melbourne for once. But when it goes the other direction, first quarter, I'm like, all right, let's see the second quarter. Okay, it's worse. Third quarter, oh, well, okay, it's within 30. And then fourth
Mhm.
quarter, I'm like, whatever. So, but as long as the game's somewhat close, I'm always going to be watching it. So yeah,
No,
and
I'm
and honestly, a lot of times I just do my homework while I watch it. I
listening.
just
Hmm.
and I've got I've got it on my laptop and I got my TV behind, so I
Mhm.
can be productive and do managerial economics while I watch my team get behinds instead of goals.
I've done that. I've done that before. Trust me. I've been keeping track of a game and done the same thing. So completely get with
Mhm.
you on that one. Like I said, we'll change it a little bit because of the expansion nature of the Gold Coast Suns. Do you have a favorite player currently on the list that you enjoy watching them play footy?
Matty Rowe, 100%. I think he entered the league when I started watching, or if not, right in that realm. He's the Gold Coast Suns' best player, hands down. Now, I will also say, and this is not to take anything away from Matty Rao, but when the rest of your midfield isn't very good, the one good player in the midfield is going to get a lot of disposals. So you'll see some insane stat lines of Matty Brown. It's nothing to take away from him. He's a fantastic player. But by the same standpoint, when you got one guy making all the plays and the rest are standing around watching that guy make the good plays, it's not going to be a recipe for success. I will say I think our forward line is getting pretty good. You got King up there, Lukosius. I mean, I think there's a lot of promise there. Backline depends. It depends. They're kind of hot and cold. But the biggest thing I would say is the Gold Coast Suns really need to focus on their midfield. I know they addressed it some this offseason, but it's really going to take a lot of work with Damian Hardwick, especially working in that midfield area with whoever the coach is for that, to get everyone on the same page. Because if you don't win the midfield, you ain't winning the game. Because
Mhm.
you can't score goals if every time the ball goes into the midfield, it's going toward your defense, not toward your offense. It ain't going to work.
No, completely agree. Completely agree with you on that one. I know this isn't easy for you sometimes. Again, I think Gold Coast played much better this season than years before. So, your thoughts on last season as a whole as the Gold Coast Suns?
They did great at home, but there's an old soccer saying, right? To be a successful club, you win at home and you tie on the road. Now, obviously, ties aren't often in Aussie rules.
Okay, all right, ladies and gentlemen. So sometimes the fun part about internet interviews sometimes is when the internet decides it doesn't want to behave, it doesn't want to behave. So we're back. So Kyle, will hop back to you again. Thoughts on this last Gold Coast Sun season? As you said, great home record. Unfortunately, the road not so much.
Absolutely. And like I said, there's a saying in soccer, right? To be a good club and make the playoffs, right? And most leagues don't have playoffs, but at least Major League Soccer, you got to win at home and tie on the road. Now, there isn't many ties in Australian rules football, but you can win a third even of your games on the road. And if the Suns had just gotten a third of their road games as wins, they would have made the finals. But I think they won what, one of their road games, maybe two. Like, it's not
I
going
think it
to
was
do
two.
it. That's
I
not
think it
going to
was
get you
two.
into the finals. Yep. Which 2 out of 11. I mean, and they were on some massive losing streak on the road,
Hmm.
like 8 or 9 games. So that's just not going to do it. And I'm not saying, road losses happen. AFL is one of if you look at like the percentage of times that home teams win in all domestic sports, AFL is right there near the top because you got a lot of players. You're traveling long distances. When you got a lot of those players, every single player, it's going the toll is going to weigh heavier on the road. It's going to be difficult to win on the road, especially and it's going to favor teams that aren't with Melbourne, right? Because in Melbourne, half of your road games are still, down the block. So that is an issue, especially for the Adelaides and Perths and Brisbane and Gold Coast. But
Hmm.
nevertheless, it's one of those things where if you want to be a successful club, you have to win on the
Hmm.
road, at least at some point in the year with some consistency.
Yep. Hold the home court and then steal a few things, steal a few on the road, and that's a recipe for success for sure. So we'll jump from this year to this upcoming season. We're getting closer and closer to February, getting closer to the season. So your thoughts on this upcoming year? Can Gold Coast make finals?
Deja vu. So I hear this every time. It's oh yeah, Gold Coast are gonna do it. They're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. The optimistic side of me says yes. The pessimistic side of me says they're gonna finish ninth or 10th, which look would still be some improvement,
Hmm.
but it's one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. Listen, I'm a Bengals fan. It took us 31, 32 years to win a playoff game. And remember, it's hard, right? As a Bengals, as a Cincinnati sports fan, because my entire life, it took until I was 21 years old to see my team win a playoff game. The Cincinnati Reds, I've never seen them win a playoff series ever, and I don't think the ownership cares. So listen, I'm used to teams disappointing me. I think it's a good precursor for marriage, frankly. But nevertheless, I see. I want to believe the Gold Coast Suns would do well. I really do. I mean, I know I know I'm pessimistic about them a lot, but like I really do hope that they win. It's best for not only the team and the city of Gold Coast, but also, frankly, the league. I mean, we want these clubs in maybe slightly less traditional markets to be successful.
Hmm.
But will they? I think a lot of it depends upon how much Damian Hardwick gets the guys ready. And whatever their strategy is for tackling away games in terms of like preparation, playing in different, varied climates, although Australia is not that varied of a climate. It's not like America where you're in Miami one day and then you're in Seattle the next. Like, but still, I think that whoever is in charge of getting the players ready needs to really have their feet held to the fire. Because when you are at that level, you have to be ready to play no matter where you are, no matter what day, what time, you have to be ready, or you're not a finals ready club.
Hmm.
So
No, I'm 100% with you. I Gold Coast is kind of the enigma team because I just want to know how much improvement will come from the new guys. Like you bring in Jamie Noble, you bring in Dan Rioli. Honestly, I think they come into the spots where, as you said, they had some issues in the defensive end. I think they bring some run and carry, which I think only helps the style that Damian Hardwick wants to play. So I'm fascinated to see how they go. I worry. I'm kind of like you. I think ninth, 10th place is where I kind of see them because a lot of the teams that made finals this year, they got better. They got stronger. Can Gold Coast crack the safe? We'll have to see. I'm fascinated by Gold Coast this year to see can they break the hoodoo on the road and can they maintain that great record at home? That'll be the biggest thing there. So let's
I
have a
will
little
say, I will
go
also
ahead.
say, I'm patting myself in the back a little bit. Last time I was on the podcast, there was a question about which team that isn't in the finals will make a run to the finals. And as much as I hated to say it, my pick was the Brisbane Lions, and now they're AFL champions. So I just want to give myself a little pat on the back on that one. I'm not terrible with predictions, so I'm not Stephen A. Smith talking about the NHL. Okay, I've got a little bit higher up on that totem pole of knowledge. So
Well,
yes,
I'll do this since we're both having a pat on the back. Is that I'll do the humble brag here. Is in both of my preseason previews of both the men's and the women's, I got the premiers correct. I got
real.
both Premier.
There you
Yep, I
go.
got the North Melbourne for the women and Brisbane for the men. I got both of them correct this last year. The only thing was the opponents were a little bit different. I had Brisbane v Collingwood rematch in the grand final with Brisbane
Mhm.
knocking off Collingwood, and I think I had North Melbourne and Adelaide in the grand final. It ended up being North Melbourne and Brisbane in the women's final. But I got both premiers right, so I'll do my little my pat on my back on this one. I don't think it's going to happen again, but it was fun to have that little fun little nugget to myself that in both previews I got it right. So sorry, reel it in, coach, reel it in. So let's have a little bit of fun. You know up here that we most Americans want to be the general manager. They want it. They can do anything that the guy in charge can do. So I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with this. I'm gonna install you as the list manager for Gold Coast for one day. You can pick off one player from any of the other 17 teams to join Gold Coast to get them over that hump and get them into finals. Who's the one guy you're bringing up to the Gold Coast to help this Suns team make finals?
So that's a difficult question, and here's why. There are certain players that I would like to get, but I would not be able to seal the deal in one day. if you're saying one day, make the call, make the trade,
Hmm.
probably Dustin Martin. I know he's older, wealth of experience though, has a lot that he could offer the newer guys. I still think he has a lot of talent. Obviously, Richmond is not doing well, so it's not like he's leaving the promised land to come to the Gold Coast Suns. There was already talks about him coming to the Gold Coast. I'm not sure where the status of those deals are, but I would
He's retired.
definitely. He retired this
He's
year.
full on retired. Yep.
That's a shame. Well, bring him out of retirement. Give him the Tom Brady treatment, you know?
There've
Let
been
the
a lot
refs
of there have
throw.
been a lot of people. There have been a lot of people, but unfortunately, I think the ability for him to come on to the roster is already come and gone. So unfortunately, that won't happen. So Dusty Martin will not be playing AFL footy this year. It's a it's tragic. It's sad because he is such an incredible player. But yep, he is not going to be there. Pop, I am going to continue to talk because again, we have another pause. Okay, so I think the Zoom fairies really do not like us today. So let's hop right back
They
onto it.
hate
So
Gold Coast, clearly.
I guess. So no Dusty Martin, but I agree. If you can ring him in, he would be an incredible addition. So let's move on. Hopefully, the Gremlins are through today. So most people know that I am a huge fan of the women's game. I love the AFLW and the women's state leagues. So I got to ask, sir, do you keep track of the AFLW? And if you don't, which there's nothing wrong with that, is there something that the AFLW could do to get you to watch more?
So for PR reasons, sure. In reality, no, no, I really don't watch it. I mean, like I know it exists. I look at the ladder once in a while, but I, it's just hard for me to get excited about women's sports in general. And I'm just being honest. I mean, WNBA, eh. I actually there is some family friends that are like, we got season tickets to the WNBA team, and I'm like, cool. Why? But serious,
It's
like
to
it's
each
just
their own.
not my thing. Teeth, yeah, exactly. To each their own. I think I really do want to see the women's game grow because I think it's great for women to try the sport. Just like I'm really glad that there's a new women's hockey league, you know, PWHL.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all jokes aside, I really want it to work well. I want it to be something that the AFL is proud of and give women a chance to play sports too. So I think it's great. In terms of what I would do to start watching it, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's a lot. I'm not that demographic. I'm not someone who's interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good for North Melbourne. I'm glad that they're dropping down to the women's side to get some good competition. But in all jokes aside, like I wish him the best of luck. I'm just probably not going to watch it that much.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And again, to each their own. I know plenty of people that they just don't, they're not interested in it because it is a different game. It is. It's 16 aside instead of 18. There's different rules when it comes to out of bounds. So I completely get it. And not everybody's going to get into it. So I completely understand. So I'm just interested to see the people that don't, if there is something that could maybe get their interest. So I appreciate it. Not a problem there. So we jump to it. I gotta ask, sir, being from Cincinnati, have you ever been to Australia to watch a game? And if not, do you plan on it soon?
So I have not. I'd love to one day. Obviously, tickets are really expensive, and I'm doing a bunch of other stuff in my life right now. But at some point, I would love to visit Australia. Probably my trip would be to Melbourne if I had to pick a place. Find some time when the Gold Coast is having a road game against one of those Melbourne teams, and then just like an entire weekend, just straight AFL. Eat, go to the game. Get another bite to eat, go to the game. Like going to Disney World, but Australia. So I think I'd probably see that in the future, maybe the next like 5 to 10 years. Nothing immediate, but at some point I'd love to experience it. It's also just such a long plane flight.
Mm-hmm.
What is it,
Yep.
like 14 hours, 24 hours? I
Dep-
might be,
all just depends on where you fly. All just where it depends where you fly out of. I
yeah.
know. I think I looked into it at one time, and if I caught a flight, I get it's one of the longer flights that you could possibly get. Is I think Chicago to either Chicago or Sydney or Dallas to Sydney are the two options
Uh,
without going to like Des Moines, Denver, LA, at least personally for
Hmm.
me. Like for you, it might be a tiny bit easier because you probably fly Cincinnati to Dallas or Cincinnati to Chicago, and then from there. So
Hmm.
it's roughly, I'm guessing roughly for most, it's going to be anywhere between 17 and 20 hours, just depending on how it goes.
Oof.
So not a problem. So I'll ask this. This isn't easy. I think we've all seen it. We've all watched the games. Is that for me, Americans, we love our food at our sport. So I ask this, when you go, is there a type of food that you really want to try when you go down there?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like meat pies are like pretty standard in Australia. I
Hmm.
don't know a whole lot about Australian cuisine. I know what Tim Tams are. I kind of addicted to them, to be honest. We have a
They're
place
hard
called
not
Jungle
to get
Jim's.
addicted to.
They're Murray River salted caramel. I so a buddy of mine, I gave him a pack of them as one of my Christmas presents to him, and I had dinner with him a week ago. I said, "So, how would you think about the Tim Tams?" He goes, "Well, you gave me the pack, and I had finished them before I left your driveway." And I was like,
Love it.
wow, okay. How many calories was that? He goes, it's a cheat day. I'm like, well, dude, one cookie's like 300. It's a cheat day. Don't think about it. I'm just like, I'm worried about your health, man. Nah, nah, nah. It was good. It was good. So
That's awesome.
big fan of them. Also I have Bundaberg root beer. I mean, I think it's frankly the best root beer I've ever had. And then if I have to, I'm not a big beer drinker, but Cooper's beer, I got turned on to that during nationals in Austin.
South
Um,
Australian beer company there. So
oh yeah, for sure. Foster's, no, no, not so good.
don't
I
bring
tried
that
that
up
at
with Australians. The few Australians that I've talked to said it is the farthest thing from an Australian beer that you're gonna get into.
yeah. Well,
So
I was at Outback. I'm like, Australian beers are like, and then they give some like stupid Australian accent. I mean, it's she looked like she was from Canada. She's just like the Foster's beer, mate. I'm like, okay, let's try that. And I taste. I'm like, no, no,
yeah,
no.
I had a friend of mine one time said they asked an Australian what he thought of Foster's. He goes, it's like drinking piss. Is his exact quote. I kid you not. His exact quote. So all
I mean,
right. So
I've never done that, but I have to imagine. Like whenever someone says that, the first thing that goes through my head is, what are you comparing that to?
it's the honesty of it. I find absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. So we'll jump to it. So if we go to a game, I know for some people, especially over here in the States, the seat is essential. So you've seen some of the stadiums, the MCG, the SCG, the GABA. Where would you think would be the ideal place for you to sit to watch your first ever live Aussie Rules football game?
I know this is probably just the, oh, actually, obviously it would be dead center of the field. I think about midway up so
Mhm.
that I can see the full field. I don't want to be
Second
super
tier.
low down,
Yep.
so I want to be able to see the players move. In terms of what stadium, though, there's two. Well, there's three options. One is with Gold Coast Suns play, obviously. But
Metrocon or Heritage Bank, whatever the heck it is. It's changed names like four times.
what's funny is in Cincinnati, our arena is called Heritage Bank Arena. So it's Heritage Bank Arena, Heritage Bank Center. It's just a coincidence, but I just think it's funny. So I can't even talk about where my team plays without everyone going, wait, they play at the arena down. I'm like, no, no, they don't. No, no, no. But in terms of like what stadium, that'd probably be third. Between the MCG with the history and then Optus Stadium in Perth, just because it's
Hmm.
brand new. I just feel like they're both great environments. But I'd probably say the MCG just because of its history.
Hmm.
It's like footy mecca in a way.
Hmm.
It almost the name almost sort of precedes itself in that regard. So
Nope.
yeah.
Hard to argue that. If I get to Melbourne, I want to get to the MCG for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, and the last question that I always end my podcast on, and this is fun for me because again, you're one of those relatively new into it, but you're playing and you've gotten into the Gold Coast Suns. So my question is, favorite game of footy you have ever seen live on the telly, on your iPad, 2 a.m., 11 p.m. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen.
So there was a buzzer beater that Gold Coast had in the past couple years. I can't remember the team that they were playing against, but that was up there. Honestly, though, and this is going to be kind of a cop out answer. I was at USAFL Nationals. I went to the Division One final, and that was probably the best. Not based on the level of skill, but the fact that like it's the only footy game where I've ever sat down and watched it at a high level. And when you're there, it's just different than anything else.
Hmm.
It wasn't a great game. I mean, Austin did what Austin does, and Denver tried. They got a little bit closer at the end, but when Austin goes on a run, they're unstoppable. But nevertheless, I'd say that was probably the best game I've ever watched, just because it was experience. First time I ever like really sat down and watched high level footy in person. So I'd probably say that.
There's nothing wrong with that. A USAFL answer is always fantastic. I love it. Austin, they're fun to watch. They're incredibly hard to play, but they are fun to watch when they play it. So, Kyle, I know we've fought through some computer issues. We've got through it. We've got through all the questions. It has been incredible to sit down and have a chat with you. Again, I want to give you the chance to talk about it. The University of Cincinnati team, you're part of the group that got it started. Again, thank you so much for the work that you are putting into there. That is great. So tell us, how are things going with the University of Cincinnati team? I know we're in the middle of winter, so unfortunately there's no currently being played right now. So how are things at the University of Cincinnati footy team?
It's going great. First off, I think we're having our first practice on Wednesday. So, I mean,
Layer up.
uh, exactly. Well, I think it's when it's at 9:20 p.m. too. But I think it's going to be like high 30s, maybe mid
Whew.
30s. So it's not going to be too bad.
Fahrenheit, Australians that are listening, Fahrenheit.
Yep, yep.
It's a
Freedom units.
little bit colder, a little bit
Yeah.
colder.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're like, oh, that mate, that's not too bad. And it's like, no, 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 no. Good.
It's a hot practice. 30s is like 95. So
Just go south until you see a penguin, and you'll know what we're talking about here. But
uh
nevertheless, it's been going great. There's another like I'd say five, six, seven students that are wanting to come play. It would not shock me if we routinely have 30 some students at practices this spring. In terms of my involvement, I stepped in as president of the Dockers. I've I'm not even on the board at this point with UC's team. I've left it all to PJ. He's an awesome guy, great person, really smart, especially for his age. I mean, I've never met anyone that age like him. So he's got the club's his baby now.
mhm,
He's really built out the organization. And meanwhile, I'm actually working with PJ. We got about 10 to 15 students at Wright State, which is just outside of Dayton, Ohio, about an hour from UC, that are interested in a team. And then there's a group of adults. I know college kids are adults, but like we're talking like 30-year-olds that are interested in a metro team underneath the Dockers out of Dayton,
mhm,
called the Battlehawks. So we're working on building that. There's about 5 to 10 people there. So as the president of the Dockers, the way I look at it is we got a massive pool of people to draw from.
mhm,
Obviously, I think we're like 9,500 minutes away from Columbus, and they have their own team, whatever. That is what it is. But within a 2 hours drive of us, we also have Dayton,
mhm,
Lexington, Louisville, and Indianapolis. And I feel that if we can start drawing from those places, we got, 9, 10 million people to draw from. We can put a pretty good team together.
mhm,
So, as president of Dockers, my goal is basically to try to help not just grow the sport in our city, but in the surrounding cities. With Cincinnati is like we are the major team in the area. And, my goal is to start really showing a presence at USAFO Nationals, and down the road start competing for championships, maybe 3 to 5 years from now. But it's a long process to rebuild your club. We got the first ever USAFL Division I championship. It was I think it was against Nashville at home in up in Mason, right near
mhm,
Kings Island. But it'd be, I'm not saying we'll ever win a Division I championship in Cincinnati, but I think it's something that we should strive for. The old shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you land among the stars thing.
mhm,
So yeah, and I think the one of the biggest things you can do as a USAFL club, if anyone in USAFL clubs are listening, pick a city within a 2.5 hour drive of you and start working on that city as a metro team. You'll be growing the sport, and all those players are eligible to play for you too.
mhm. Nope, 100%. It's one of the things that I've said here in Des Moines. I said if anybody can get Omaha going, we need to really help them out because it would not only help us, but it would help them as well. So 100%. So great hearing the work and everything there. It seems like you're really trying to find a way to get Southern Ohio with some great footy action. So that is absolutely fantastic. So Kyle, again, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. This has been another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, if you like what you were listening to, please like and subscribe, and we'll be back with more of this off-season supporter series. I have so many more to sit down and chat with you, talking with most of the clubs. Last time I looked, I believe North Melbourne is the only one that I'm still looking for a supporter of. But other than that, I've got a couple of fantastic interviews lined up. I cannot wait. So we'll be back with more footy coverage in your ears very, very soon.